It seems like after all the storms, all the chaos, and all the emotional battles, the moment everyone's been waiting for has finally arrived. Melody Holt has stood her ground, fought through every obstacle, and come out stronger than ever before. This time, it's not about gossip or rumors. It's about justice, dignity, and a woman finally taking back everything that was taken from her. Martell Holt, who for years believed he could control every narrative and twist every story to his advantage, has finally met his match. And the truth is, that match was always Melody. Inside that courtroom, everything changed. The same woman who once stood beside Martell through business ventures, family moments, and public humiliation was now standing across from him, ready to end the cycle once and for all. Those who were present said that the energy in that courtroom was unlike anything they had ever felt before. Melody wasn't angry, she wasn't emotional, she wasn't even trying to prove a point. She was calm, prepared, and determined. And that quiet strength spoke louder than any outburst could. For years, Martell thrived on chaos. He knew how to turn every situation around to make himself look like the victim, even when he was the one causing the pain. He used charm, manipulation, and control as his weapons. But this time, none of that worked. Because Melody didn't come to play defense. She came to take back her power. Every document, every witness, every piece of evidence was lined up with precision. This wasn't an emotional fight anymore, it was a strategic one. Observers described the moment when Melody's team began presenting their findings. It was like watching years of pain unfold in reverse. Every time Martell tried to deny something, another piece of truth came forward. The courtroom grew more tense with each revelation. What once had been his comfort zone, speaking confidently and trying to outtalk everyone, became his biggest weakness. He couldn't charm his way out of this one. The facts were too clear, and Melody's silence was louder than any speech. People who saw Melody that day said she carried herself differently. She wasn't just defending her name or her motherhood. She was reclaiming her dignity. Her calmness was powerful. She didn't roll her eyes, she didn't interrupt, and she didn't let Martell's presence shake her focus. That unshakable energy became the symbol of everything she had worked toward: freedom, peace, and closure. Meanwhile, Martell's demeanor told an entirely different story. In the beginning, he walked in confident, believing he still had the upper hand. He probably thought he could talk his way through like he always had in interviews and public appearances. But as the truth began unfolding, that confidence slowly began to fade. Witnesses described his expression changing from smug to unsettled. His usual smirk disappeared. His jaw tightened. He began whispering to his attorney, fidgeting, looking everywhere but at Melody. The same man who once prided himself on control was losing it right in front of everyone. When the judge began responding to the evidence, it became clear that the balance of power had completely shifted. For the first time, Melody wasn't being questioned, she was being respected. Her preparation, her patience, and her perseverance all paid off. Every claim Martell had tried to make was being met with solid proof to the contrary. It wasn't about rumors anymore. It was about truth. And when the gavel finally came down, the energy in that room changed forever. Those who were there said that Melody didn't smile or celebrate. She simply took a deep breath, stood up, and walked out quietly. That silence was powerful. It said everything that needed to be said. No words, no shade, no celebration, just peace. Outside the courthouse, word began to spread fast. Social media picked up the story within minutes. People started talking about how Melody had finally won, not just in court, but in life. Fans who had followed her journey from the beginning were emotional. They called it her moment of vindication, her redemption arc, her well-deserved peace. Hashtags celebrating her strength flooded the internet. And for once, it wasn't about the drama. It was about a woman who refused to let heartbreak define her. While the world was celebrating Melody, Martell was dealing with the reality of losing something much deeper than a court case. He lost control. For a man like him, control was everything. Control over the story, control over how people viewed him, control over how he could make others feel guilty for his actions. And now, all of that was gone. Those who saw him after court said he looked angry, frustrated, and defeated. The cameras caught a man who no longer had the confidence he once flaunted. His silence wasn't out of peace, it was out of embarrassment. Martell reportedly stormed out of the courthouse, avoiding questions and cameras. His frustration was visible, and it was clear that the situation had finally caught up to him. For so long, he believed he could outtalk, outsmart, and outshine Melody. But this time, she didn't play his game. She changed it. Once the footage started circulating online, fans began dissecting every little detail. They replayed the courtroom moments, zoomed in on his expressions, and compared it to Melody's calm composure. The difference was night and day. And soon, the internet had made its judgment. Martell wasn't the misunderstood man anymore. He was the man who had finally been exposed for what he truly was: controlling, manipulative, and unwilling to take accountability. As public perception shifted, Martell's supporters began to disappear. Even people who had once defended him started going silent. The narrative had finally changed, and there was no going back. Melody had regained her voice, and the world was now listening to her side, not his. What happened next was even more telling. Instead of accepting defeat and focusing on healing, Martell reportedly began trying to rebuild his image. Sources close to him said he started contacting media outlets, bloggers, and even castmates, trying to get people to tell his version of the story. He wanted sympathy. He wanted to paint himself as the misunderstood father, the victim of lies, the man unfairly judged. But it was too late. The public wasn't buying it anymore. People had seen too much, heard too much, and they weren't falling for his usual charm. He even hinted at releasing a tell-all interview series, where he planned to share what he called the real truth about his relationship with Melody. But fans immediately called it out as damage control. The problem wasn't that Martell wanted to tell his story, it was that his story had changed too many times before. His credibility was gone. His words no longer carried weight. As he tried to rebuild his image, Melody did the complete opposite. She stayed silent. No posts, no interviews, no cryptic quotes, nothing. She let her piece speak for itself. That silence made her even more powerful. Every time Martell spoke, he lost more respect. Every time Melody stayed quiet, she gained more of it. Fans noticed the difference. They began calling Melody the blueprint for grace under pressure. They praised how she handled everything with class. Even media outlets that once stayed neutral began giving her credit for the way she carried herself. She had turned her pain into purpose, her heartbreak into growth. Meanwhile, Martell was unraveling. His attempts to regain sympathy kept backfiring. Every time he tried to explain himself online, the comments were flooded with people reminding him of his past behavior. His charm had expired. The same confidence that once made him appealing now came across as arrogance. The same control he once prided himself on now looked desperate. Some of his business relationships reportedly started to crumble too. Sponsors began to distance themselves, not wanting to be tied to his name. The same public platform he used to build himself up was now working against him. Every new statement, every social media post, every defensive comment only dug the hole deeper. It became clear that Martell wasn't just losing public favor, he was losing credibility. And for a man who had always thrived on validation, that loss hit hard. Those close to him said he began isolating himself, becoming obsessed with trying to change the narrative. He couldn't stand that the world had finally turned against him. But the truth was, this wasn't the world's doing. This was the result of his own actions catching up to him. As Melody continued to rise, attending events, focusing on her business ventures, and empowering other women, the contrast between them became impossible to ignore. She was focused on growth. He was focused on revenge. She was healing. He was unraveling. Even relationship experts began weighing in on the situation, analyzing how Martell's behavior reflected patterns of control and ego. They explained that when someone loses power over the person they once controlled, they often spiral. And that's exactly what was happening. Martell wasn't just upset about losing in court, he was upset about losing the ability to control how people saw him. Online discussions turned into deep conversations about emotional abuse, manipulation, and healing. Fans began sharing their own experiences, saying they found inspiration in Melody's calmness and strength. What had once been a messy reality TV storyline had now become a powerful example of growth and self-respect. Melody had turned pain into purpose, and Martell had turned denial into downfall. But even after all that, whispers started to spread that Martell wasn't done. Some insiders claimed that he was planning something drastic to regain attention. Maybe a new project, maybe another interview, maybe even trying to bring new people into the drama. But whatever it was, it reeked of desperation. He reportedly started reaching out to people from the show, hoping someone would side with him publicly. But most of them declined. They didn't want to get involved because they knew it would only backfire. The public had already chosen a side, and it was clear whose story they believed now. Even when Martell tried to drop subtle comments or indirect shade online, it didn't land. Fans instantly called it out for what it was: bitterness. His reputation had become so damaged that even his silence now felt calculated. Every move he made was being analyzed, and none of it worked in his favor. Meanwhile, Melody's silence remained her strongest weapon. She didn't have to clap back. She didn't need to respond. Her peace spoke for itself. Every time she appeared somewhere, whether it was a panel discussion, an event, or just a quiet moment online, fans flooded her comments with love and respect. They saw her as a woman who had finally won her freedom, not just from a man, but from a toxic cycle. It became clear that Melody's win wasn't just about the courtroom. It was about emotional independence. For years, she had been tied to Martell's drama, his decisions, and his mistakes. Now, she had separated herself completely. She was no longer reacting to him. She was living her life, on her own terms. But Martell's story continued to spiral. Sources claimed that behind the scenes, he was struggling financially, emotionally, and professionally. The same ego that once gave him confidence was now eating away at him. Losing public favor, losing credibility, and losing control were things he wasn't prepared to face. And instead of accepting that reality and trying to grow from it, he kept trying to fight against it, making things worse with every move. Some insiders even hinted that there might be a new woman involved, someone Martell thought could help him distract from the chaos. But if true, it only added fuel to the fire. Fans weren't falling for it. They saw it for what it was: another attempt to stay relevant, another way to shift focus away from his downfall. The truth is, Martell's downfall wasn't sudden. It was slow, built up over years of choices that finally came full circle. From the infidelity to the arrogance, from the manipulation to the public disrespect, it all added up. And when it was finally time to face accountability, there was no one left to shield him. Melody's big win wasn't just a victory in court. It was the symbolic end of an era, the moment she finally broke free from Martell's control completely. She didn't just win on paper. She won emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And that kind of win can't be taken away. As time passes, the story of Melody and Martell will be remembered not just as a reality show feud, but as a real-life lesson. A lesson about strength, patience, and the power of walking away with grace. Because sometimes, silence is louder than revenge. And Melody proved that perfectly. Martell Holt may still try to reclaim attention, but it no longer matters. The world has already moved on. His downfall is now part of the story he created himself, and Melody's rise is the chapter she wrote on her own. When people look back at this moment, they'll see a man who lost everything trying to hold on to power, and a woman who gained everything by letting go. And that, more than any court ruling, is the real victory.